Hey guys, Andrew Davidson here, and welcome back to another As Per My Ability video. It's good to see you guys. It's good to have you with us here today. If you like our videos, if you like our content, if you like board games in general, please do us a favor. Comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff, and also don't forget to hit the bell so you get notifications when we post new videos. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing to help our channel grow. Now, I know that The Godfather appeals to a older generation. When I talk with millennials and Gen Zers, they typically regard The Godfather as some old, ancient, prehistoric piece of film. They may have heard of it. They may have not even heard of it. They probably think that it's in black and white. They don't consider it as one of the greatest American pieces of cinema, even though the AFI does put it up there pretty highly on their list. But they just don't think of The Godfather being relevant today. There's just nothing about The Godfather that's seminal, that's influential, that's something that's a part of our modern cultural zeitgeist. Well, I'm going to play a little game with you. And then once we play this game, I'm going to roll the sweet intro. But I'd like to play a game first. And the game is fill in the blank. Ready? I got two questions for you. And the goal of the game is to fill in the blank. Statement number one. Revenge is a dish best served. Statement number two. I keep my friends close, but my enemies... Now, if you got one or two of those questions correct, guess what? I have news for you, because you are actually, in fact, familiar with The Godfather, Corleone's empire. Welcome back. So today we're talking about The Godfather, Corleone's Empire by Eric Lang, designer Eric Lang. Now, I typically like a lot of Eric Lang games, at least the ones that I've played. I think he's an interesting person. I've watched some interviews. I've never met the guy, but I've watched some interviews with him, and he seems like a really interesting person to probably chat about board games with. Now, having said that, The Godfather, Corleone's Empire is a really interesting amalgamation type game of worker placement, drafting, area influence. There's a lot going on in this game. And so what I'd like to do, normally I don't do a whole walkthrough of a game, but today I'm gonna stretch my muscles a little bit and show you how the game is played. And then we'll get back and we'll figure out exactly what I like about The Godfather, Corleone's Empire. In The Godfather, you are playing a family. You're playing your own family working for the Corleones. And you're trying to kind of build up some scratch, build up some reputation, so that eventually, by the end of the game, you'll be able to break off from the Corleone Empire and have your own empire. This is the rulebook for the game. It is a quite good rulebook. It's got some great illustrations and art and walks you through all of the different phases and things like that. It's got quite a few pages, but that's because, as you can see, a lot of pages are simply just artwork and a little bit of text. And so that is the rulebook for the game. Let's talk about the game itself. But before I talk about the board, the components, how the game is played, I want to start off by talking about how the game is won. Now, every player is going to receive a briefcase in their color. I don't know if you can tell, but that is yellow. There's the yellow color. And this is my tin briefcase. Cool. So the object of the game is, at the end of 4 rounds, which I will talk about later, the end of 4 rounds, whoever has the most money in their briefcase is the winner. You also will start the game with some money cards. I've just got singles here. I do highly recommend that you sleeve. I've sleeved my cards just because as much as I love the Godfather, the cards I notice tend to wear out a little bit. So I've put some kind of cheap sleeves on these, and you start the game with money. Well, I know what you're thinking to yourself, well, Andrew, why don't I just take my money, throw it in my briefcase, and let's call it a day? Not that simple. Unfortunately, the only way for your money that's in your hand to get into your briefcase is by taking actions which allows you to take one single card, money card, and put it in your briefcase. There we go. And then that is now permanent. It will count for the end of the game. When the game's over, we will flip it open and we'll count up all of our monies. And like I said, the object of the game is whoever has the most money in their briefcase wins the game. Now, one concept that's very, very crucial to understand in The Godfather, Corleone's empire, is that all the resources, the money included, are all finite. They're not infinite, they're finite, which means when they're gone, they're gone. Now, because of the suitcase idea that I just kind of talked about in regards to money being in your hand does not count for anything, you got to be able to get it into your suitcase in order to win the game, which I'm hitting this part because I think it's basically the crux and the brilliance of this game, is that you at no point, unlike some other games like Monopoly or games that deal with money, at no point during the game are you allowed to make change. So I could never turn in money to get like a 5. Like I could never turn in maybe a 3. Let's say I had an extra 1, so 3, 4, 5. I'm going to cash those in and I'm going to take a single $5 bill. That is not permitted within the game. You are never allowed to make change because of this whole suitcase action, because you will be putting one card at a time. So if you make change and you upgrade to a 5, well, that's going to make it a lot easier to just put that 5 in there rather than taking multiple actions to put your 3 and your 1 and your other 1 in there. So resources are finite, money's finite, and there's no making change in the game. These are important concepts because I think they are the coolest concepts in the game so far. Let's move on to talk about resources in the game. Now, you'll be using resources to basically complete what's called jobs, which I'll get to later on in the video. And the resources are basically illegal things like guns, this is blood money, this is alcohol, and these are drugs. And drugs are wild, so they count as anything for completing jobs. So this could technically be 2 alcohol if that's what I need to complete a job. Again, resources are finite. There are only so many of these cards. There's a deck of them. When they are gone, they are gone. When you spend them, you put them back into the pile so that other players can get them, but there is no infinite amount of resources. They are all finite. So if someone takes all the booze cards and you're like, I need a booze card to be able to get something done so I can get some points, you are in tough position, my friend, and hopefully someone will spend their cards so that you can then take them. And so these are the resources. They're all illegal goods that you'll be using in the game. So I've already talked about the board in general in regards to this is New York, this is Upper Side, Queens, Brooklyn, stuff like that. But let's talk about some other things on the board, such as over here is the round tracker. You will be playing 4 rounds and then the game will be over, so 4 rounds. I know that sounds like it'd be kind of short, but this is actually not that short of a game because within each round there are all these different phases. So you will complete every single phase and then you will go to the next round where you will start and go through all the phases again and then go to the next round. So even though it's 4 rounds, which when I first thought 4 rounds, that's not very long, it can be a little bit on the longer side just because you are going through all of the above phases here. I will go through all of these phases. I will talk about how the gameplay works, but there's one more thing I want to do before I jump into the crux of The Godfather, Corleone's empire, and that's basically to talk about the pieces. So let's do that next. Okay, cool. So, we've already talked about the board, the different aspects, the phases, the rounds, how the money system works with the suitcase or briefcase. I might use those words interchangeably, I apologize. And a little bit of the resources. Now let's talk about the pieces that you get, which is basically your family. So every player is going to start with their family. I've chosen yellow to use as an example. And you're going to start with some thugs. Thugs are denoted, they're just random like people. They're just thugs. They're not that special. They're denoted by square bases. If you are playing anything other than a two-player game, you are going to start with 2 thugs. If you're playing with a three-player game, you will start with 3 thugs. Right here. So this would be a 2-player game. Anything else, you're just going to start with 2 thugs. But you've also got some family members. And family members are incredibly powerful people of your family. And family members are denoted by round bases. Now there are other family members. You unfortunately only get to start the game with 1. The other family members will go on the 2nd and the 4th round. So they will be almost unlocked, if you will, when you get to that point. So you'll have 2 more family members to play with, but at the start of the game you just get 1 family member to play with and 2 thugs, or possibly 3 if you're playing a 2-player game. So the last thing that you get is basically what they call these control tokens. They're not very special. They're just kind of hexagonal things that we will talk about when we get to a section called Turf Wars. My favorite part of the whole game. Well, yeah, one of my favorite parts. So at the start of the game, you're going to start with your family pieces, your suitcase, and you are also going to start with a hand full of money and also some jobs. Now there are 2 types of jobs, so to speak. There are private jobs, which are ones that are held in your hand, which means nobody else at the table knows exactly what you have. This is going to make it a monopoly, can't refuse. And these are basically objectives that you can do to get you more money. But when you get money in your hand. And remember, money in your hand does not count for bull spit. You got to be able to get it into your suitcase. And so you will start with some cards. You will start with your family, and you'll pick a first player, and away we go. Let's start off with some of the phases. Now the first phase up here is construct a building. So you're going to basically pull a tile, that's a building, and you're going to place it on the lowest numbered borough. Number 1 is the Wall Street, so I would place this in an open spot. The next round, we will place another one out, but we will then place it in the next lowest, which would be over here in Brooklyn. And so now we have different buildings and establishments. On your turn, you can do one of 4 things. You can place a family member, as we talked about. You can place a thug, which we've talked about. You can play a job, which will reap its rewards, but that costs your turn. That takes your turn. Or you can also play an ally from your card, which we haven't talked about yet because you do not start the game with any allies. They will come about as you play through the game. So again, you can play a thug, play a family member, play a job, or play an ally if you would happen to have one in your hand. So those are the 4 things that you can do on your turn. You can only do one of them. Once you run out of thugs or family members, you are no longer allowed to do any of the other actions. So even if I have a job that I could fulfill, like this, my favorite one here, can't refuse. Even if I could fulfill this job, which needs, basically I need to discard 1 alcohol. If I could do this, but I don't have any family members, I'm out of the round. So you want to get these done before you place your last figure, because once you place your last figure, you have to say pass until everyone at the table has passed. So a little something to think about. After that, we move on to the next portion here, which is the meat and potatoes of the game. This is where you take the actions that I just talked about, one of the 4 actions. We will keep going around until everyone is out of actions and they all have to pass. So what you can do is you basically will rely on your family members and your thugs. And so they do different things and they go on different spots in the board. So let's kind of take a moment and let's zoom in on some of the businesses here and talk about the difference between a thug and a family member. Okay, so here I've moved in on Midtown. Here's an establishment here, here's an establishment here, and these are open establishments for future rounds and things like that. The easiest are the thugs. The thugs are square-shaped. They go into the square-shaped spots, and so they shake down the front end of establishments. So I would place my worker here, and I would be able to get this payout right here, which is 1 ammunition card. So I would go to the stack, I would take an ammunition card if there was one to be taken, because remember, the stacks are very, very thin and they're finite. So when they're gone, they're gone. But if there's some there, I can place my thug here, and I basically just get the bottom half of this establishment. They call it shaking down the front end of the business. Let's say later on in my next turn, I want to place a family member. Well, family members go in the round peg spots, and some of them are open based on how many players. So let's just pretend we had 3 or more players. And so I could place my family member here. What a family member does is he shakes down the back end of all of the buildings that he is touching. The back end is the top of the building. Oh, just killed, the dog just got taken out. The top of the building. This is considered the front of the building. This is considered the back of the building. So again, thugs shake down the front of the building, and family members shake down the backs of all the buildings that they are touching. So this is actually a really good spot because I would shake down the back end of both Midtown and Chelsea. You can't really see too much of it over here, but I would shake down the back end. And I can resolve these. Now this is very important. Listen up for all you strategy gamers. I can resolve these in any order that I want. So what this does is this gives me an ammunition card, or a gun card basically, which is going to be used for fulfilling jobs. And this symbol over here denotes being able to take 1 money card from my hand. Let's see if I can get one kind of on camera. 1 money card. I reveal it to the players to make sure that I'm not cheating, because you can put jobs in your suitcase as well, your briefcase, but more on that later. I take 1 money card and I put it in my briefcase and close it up. And that is exactly what this action does. And I can, again, resolve that in any order. So family members are really powerful. However, once a family member is played, that spot is taken. So this is very much a worker placement phase of the game. So once I've placed the thug here, Juliet cannot come along here and take this spot. It is now taken. And so unless if there's an ally that is a police officer or something that like kicks him out, and then she can place him there. But for the most part, by and large, once the spot is taken, it's taken. Same with the family members. They could go here and they could shake down the back end of this, and some other ones off screen that you can't see. So family members are really, really powerful. In order to fulfill a job card, like a shakedown, you have to discard from your hand the requisite, so blood money, guns, and alcohol. And remember, drugs are bad, kids, but they're also wild in this game. So if I had a drug card, I could use that to replace one of these that I don't have. Then I would resolve the job card, and I can resolve it in any order. What does that mean? Well, it means I can resolve the text first, and then I can get my money. Or I can get my money and then resolve the text. There is a huge, huge strategic aspect to how you resolve the different things, in what order, and with the jobs. What order are you going to resolve the text so that you can maximize getting money into your suitcase, because you really kind of want to build somewhat of an engine. So Once you've completed the job, you will show it to the players. You will discard the cards. You will do these what it says in any order that you want. And then something I haven't really talked about, your jobs will also, your completed jobs will also go in your suitcase. Why? Because jobs have different colors. There's blue, yellow, gray, and a different color. But anywho, at the end of the game, you are going to be counting up basically, okay, who did the most blue jobs? And if you do, you're going to get a money bonus. And then, okay, who did the most gray jobs? You'll get a money bonus. So the more of these that you do, that you complete, they will be put in your box. This is why it's important for when you take the suitcase action to reveal a money card to your players, because you could be cheating and just kind of go like this and say, all right, I put a money card in my suitcase, when in reality you're just kind of throwing in jobs that you never even really, it's cheating basically. So the suitcase action is for money cards only. Jobs you have to complete, and then you are able to put them in for game and scoring purposes. The next phase of the game is my absolute favorite part. It's up here. It is entitled Turf Wars. Now, we've gone through an aspect of worker placement, okay? Nothing new. Now we're moving into kind of an area control aspect to the game, which I think is really great. So it's a good amalgamation of worker placement and area control. So in the Turf Wars phase, you are going to count up your influence. Now every figure counts as 1 point, I suppose, of influence. Now this thug is only in Midtown, so I have 1 influence in Midtown. Wait, but hold on, I have a family member who is touching Midtown, so that would be 2 influence. I also have a family member touching Chelsea, so he's giving influence to everything that he touches. So there are some really great spots for your family members to end up, if you can get there, where they can kind of contribute a lot of their influence to different boroughs. The thugs, on the other hand, they only contribute to whatever borough that they've been placed in. If you win the turf, so if I have 2 and let's say Bradley has only 1, if you win, you will take one of those, like I said, the weird turf markers, and you will place it in Midtown like this. This denotes that this is my turf. I own this turf. This is my area. You will not be coming into my area without some consequences. Okay, so what does that all mean? It means that in future turns, if there is an opponent, now I know I'm using yellow, but let's say this is blue. If there is an opponent that wants to use a thug, now I stress, only a thug, not a family member, and they want to use a business in a turf that you control, you also get the action. So they will take the action and you will take the action. However, the player that places here will determine who takes their action first. Now, this is important because this building allows me to grab a gun. Now, what if there's only 1 gun left in the stack? Who should ever go first? You know what? I think I'll go first, and I will take the last remaining gun, and then I will allow the yellow player to take the action by taking 0 guns, because all the gun cards are gone. And so that is what turf means. If it's got your color in this turf, if someone uses a thug, and again, I'm repeating myself, only a thug, because this is kind of a big overlooked rule in the game, in your turf, then you get that action too. So you really are saying, hey, you want to come into my area, you want to come into my neighborhood, and you want to start doing stuff, you want to shake down businesses in my area, well, there's a price to pay. You're going to have to give me the action as well. Now, turfs can change colors or ownership colors, same diff as the kids are saying these days. And so like a purple could be placed on top of this, then a blue could be placed on top of this. And so the turfs will change throughout the game. Just because you win The first round doesn't mean it's yours forever. You will be kind of creating a stack. They do stack on top of each other. If you do control the majority of turfs at the end of the game, there are some bonuses for that. I'm not going to be getting into that, but the turf aspect is my favorite part of this game. It's hella cool. Now let's move on to the next section where we deal with allies. Now, allies are going to be placed out at the bottom of the board, which you can't see. It's off camera, so I'm just going to hold them in my hand. But they're typically down here for everyone to see. And you are always going to be putting out the number of allies minus one player. So if you're playing with 3 players, you will put out 2 allies. If you're playing with 4 players, you'll put out 3. So it's always the number of players minus 1. What does that mean? That means that someone's always going to get screwed on not being able to get an ally. So at that point, you are going to bid on your allies. And this is the part that's a little clunky. If I had a nit to pick, I would say that this is it. Other than that, really not much. So what you would do is you're going to dig in your box. I had some money in here, didn't I? And you are going to put some money in the top part here. And when everyone's ready, you will reveal, and that is how much you are willing to bid on drafting an ally. Now, let's say you're saying, well, Andrew, what if I don't want to waste my money because money counts? What if I don't want to? Well, then you just got to kind of pretend that you're doing stuff, just kind of move things around, make it look like you're doing stuff. But in reality, you will reveal nothing. So whoever has the highest, whoever bids the highest, will get first choice. So it's kind of a drafting system. There'll be the allies out there. They'll say, oh, I want this one. Whoever bid the second most, I will get this one. You will not get your money back. So if you bid $3, you don't get your $3. It goes back to the stack of money. If you are the person that bid $1, let's say, and you don't get an ally, you get that money back. So if you are the one that gets screwed and you don't get to have an ally, you get to keep your money, which is great. But if you do buy off an ally, then you lose your money. Now, allies go into your hand, and they are things that you can do on your turn. As I mentioned earlier, they're one of the 4 actions that you can take. You can play an ally and do the text. I'm not going to go through what all of the allies do, but they kind of allow you to break the game in some fashion or another with manipulating the turfs, manipulating, where you can go, even though if someone else has already been there, things like that. The last thing that we do on the track over here is we're going to basically contribute to the Don. Remember, we are all families, but we're still families underneath the hierarchical system of the Don Corleone Empire. And so the Don over here is going to need some tribute. We're going to have to tribute some stuff to him. Now, each round will delineate what you have to do to satisfy the Don. So let's kind of zoom in for a second and take a look at it. Okay, so here's a zoom in of the round tracker. And yes, there is a round marker that you move that I have not put out. I've also placed my family members off to the side here so everyone can see. The first round will tell you to place a blue building. Those are the tiles that I put out. Here we are instructed to put out red buildings. Red buildings are far, far more powerful than blue buildings, but that's about all you need to know. In the first act, the wedding, the Don is going to require everyone to discard down to 5 cards. So what can I discard? You can discard anything you want. You can discard jobs, you can discard money, you can discard your allies, although I wouldn't really recommend it, especially since you spent money to try to purchase them. But at the end of the round, you have to have 5 cards in your hand, no more than 5. The next round is also 5. And this shows that you place a blue building and you also take your family member. Oh, I just killed him off. This round here, which is Sonny's murder, he gets gunned down at the ticket station or whatever. It's kind of a bloody scene. Here you get to keep 6 cards. You also place red building at the start of the round. Remember the phases. And then for the final one, you have to discard down to 2 cards. Now listen up, ladies and gentlemen. If you discard down to 2 cards at the end of the game, because this is essentially kind of finishing up, this is the last, remember, it's the last thing you do in the game. If you discard down to 2 money cards, not jobs, money cards, not drugs, not alcohol, not, if you have 2 money cards, you discard everything else, and you keep your 2 cards, and they're money cards, you get a free briefcase action. So you get to place them in your briefcase for free at the end of the game without having to take any actions, because the game's essentially over at this point. And so that's what this kind of delineates. It's basically saying that if you have some money, you can put it in your suitcase, briefcase, suitcase, briefcase, in your suitcase, in this briefcase, in the tin that you're provided with your collar. Okay, so essentially that is how you will work through all the different phases and the rounds of The Godfather, Corleone's Empire. Like I said, it's an amalgamation of, worker placement, area control, area influence, also a drafting system by bidding to draft the allies, and then also a little bit of hand management. Wow, this has got a lot of stuff going on. One thing of note is the first player token. When you reach the end and you've done all this stuff that I've already talked about, the first player token will not move. Whoever starts the game will always go first. They will always have full reign of the board because they will always have the first player token. Unless if you send a thug to this location right here. This location denotes that I get to take $1, and again, I take the dollar into my hand because that's not in my suitcase. I'd need to take a suitcase action to get it from my hand into my suitcase. But it also says that I take the first player token. Now, I will be the first player for the rest of the game. Well, that is until someone takes this spot. So that is a very quick, condensed, in a nutshell instruction of how you're going to be playing The Godfather, Corleone's Empire. Let's get back to me talking more about why I love this game so much. Wow. This game has a lot going on in it. And what I mean by that is it has a lot of mechanisms going on it. Not mechanics, but mechanisms as far as it's got the worker placement, as you saw. It's got some drafting with the allies. It's got hand management with the end of the rounds. And it's got my favorite part of the game, which I'm usually not very good at, is the area influence. It's kind of got all of that. And you know what? All of those mechanisms, they really work. And now that doesn't really complicate the game that much. I wouldn't necessarily say that The Godfather is a complicated game. I wouldn't put it in the family game category, probably due to theme and due to just some of the mechanisms are used in a lot of other games, and when you kind of combine them all together, it can get people's heads twisted. This game is great. Now, with so much going on in the game, you would think that this game just gets slowed down, bogged down. It's clunky. It's not entertaining. It's actually not. Teaching's fairly easy. I've taught this game to probably half a dozen people, give or take, and they all seem to take to it pretty well. They ask questions, and I've answered questions. So it's a pretty easy game, even though all the mechanisms are just all coming at you at once. I think that this is a pretty accessible game. Hats off to Eric Lang, I guess, on that. Another great game. I am saying that The Godfather, Corleone's Empire, is my favorite competitive game of 2021 so far. I know we're only what are we in May at the time of recording this? We're only in May, so we got plenty of 2021 left. But as of right now, 5 months into the year, The Godfather, Corleone's Empire is my favorite game that I've played. The game makes sense. I love the idea of having a whole butt ton of money cards in your hand. that doesn't amount to jack squat. Unless if you can work an engine or figure something out to get that money into your briefcase, in your suitcase, it's not going to matter because you're probably going to have to discard down all that crap anyways. And so that's great. The non-zero sum game part to it, the finite aspect of the cards running out, the money running out, that's all brilliant. The only downside, and I mentioned this in the tutorial, is the drafting section of the allies does seem to be the only part in the game that just is a bit of a clunk. It kind of slows the game for a moment, but once everyone knows that they're just gonna bid on what they want, if they look at the allies, hey, I really want this ally, I'm gonna bid a lot, I'm gonna bid nothing, whatever, then you move on. After that, the rest of the game works really well and it flows really well. So The Godfather is an excellent game to get into. So this is where I'm going to leave us. I'm going to say that The Godfather, Corleone's Empire, even though it's got a whole bunch of mechanisms going on, it really works. It really flows. Kudos, Eric Lang. My name is Andrew Davidson. You have been watching As Per My Ability. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all at the next video.